telling you about
Well,
Woolworths.
we're catching up now. We've got through Baroness Harding's career when she was at Woolworths, working on the pick and mix with the French.
Well, so I was the commercial director at Woolworths, and the challenge for Woolworths was that no one quite knew why it existed anymore. There were some amazing people who worked there, but fewer and fewer people have been visiting Woolworths shops every year for about 15 years, and in the end, you can't make the numbers add up. I hated being at Woolworths, not because I didn't love the brand or the people, but because I couldn't answer why was it there. I couldn't really describe what its purpose was. And I suppose you see the early signs in me of learning that actually I wanted to work in an organisation with a clear purpose.
It had a purpose, but not only that. I mean, there were pressures on quarter day when the rents are due.
Oh, horrible!
Couldn't pay it. I mean, you can predict when the next lot of people are going to go broke. It'll be anything March, April, May. It will be the next lot in the high street. That will go on quarter day.
Really tough.
And the signs were there, weren't they? The shift
in people changing the way they shopped and behaved.
Yes, and it's not over yet.
No, the world, and this was pre-digital revolution.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so again, I think I was incredibly lucky. I had a call from a headhunter saying, will you meet Terry Leahy for a drink? Terry was looking to bring in, and Tesco had been very homegrown. Almost all of the leadership had started life in the shops. Terry was one of their very first graduate trainees and worked his way up in marketing, but the vast majority of the team there were homegrown, and he wanted to bring people in from the outside. Indeed.
My dad worked for Tesco's. He was a man. He was Winnowclear originally, but then he ended up being a supermarket manager.
Really
for Tesco's in Croydon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pilot Eye, Select G. I used to be a Saturday boy.
There you
Just lugging stuff around.
There you go.
Yeah, and they were ferocious retailers.
Yeah, and Terry wanted to sort of, if you like, breed in a mixture of people like me who'd got a more academic background, who'd worked in buying and marketing, to add to the people who were homegrown, brilliant retail operators. And he offered me a job buying food for Tesco. And at the time, bear in mind, I had the choice of Woolworths, where, oh my goodness, it was hard buying things for Woolworths, where sales were declining all the time, or go and join Tesco. Tesco, when I joined, was still number 2 to Sainsburys, was, I think, probably at its best point, because it was a really insecure number 2, still really focused on doing the right thing for customers to be number 1. And Terry is a brilliant retailer who, when he's stuck and doesn't know what to do, goes and asks customers what they want and tries to work out how to deliver it for them, even if he doesn't know how to make money from it. And I learned that that's how really brilliant service organisations work.
You studied Tom Peters when you were
Indeed,
at Harvard?
yes, an old McKinsey person.
Yes.
And so I joined Tesco as and I had a hugely privileged job, really. I used to say I was very good for a party. I bought all the ingredients for a party. My team had beers, wines and spirits, all of the convenience foods, all the crisp snacks and nuts and bakeries, so it was good for a party. But they were also all the high growth areas at the time. And at Tesco, when I was there, you got fired if you missed your numbers. As you say, it was a very tough culture, but you got promoted if you innovated. You got promoted if you did something different and better for customers. So when I was there, the wine team were the people who introduced screw cap wine to the UK. They tried 3 times and failed, and on the 4th time they managed to get enough of the New Zealand and Australian providers to bottle good quality wine with screw cap, because actually it stays better quality, and they persuaded us all to change the way we drink wine. And I look back and think, that was good. And so it was a brilliant time for quite a long while.
Were you there when they sort of lost their way? They had a foray into Europe, didn't they? And then later the US, it all didn't go so well, did it?
I remember Terry used to say how, at the time, when I first joined, Tesco could do no wrong, and all the media coverage was how brilliant we were. And he used to say, guys, you mustn't believe it. We are not as good as the papers say we are. And when they say we're dreadful, we will not be quite as bad either. And he was so focused on trying to stop the business become complacent. But actually, the truth is, I think it did become complacent. Now, in the end, I left Tesco. I crossed the floor of the House of Commons.
You went to Sainsburys?
I went to Sainsburys.
God, I bet they loved you for that.
And they didn't speak to me for a long time. And in the end, the reason I left, actually, which is an awful thing to say about a business, actually, I'm still very fond of, was because of the culture. Because they didn't quite know what to do with someone like me. And I'd had the best job I have done in retailing. I spent a year in a shop. Tesco had a rule that you couldn't run a division of the company, either a country operation outside the UK or a big chunk of the UK, unless you'd run a shop. That you needed, think of it in healthcare terms, that you actually needed to have real medical training to run a shop. It's not about money. And someone like me who got buying and marketing and consulting experience, if I wanted to do the next thing, which was to run a big division, I had to go and spend a year on a training programme to run a shop. And I spent a year in Tesco Extra in Yeovil in Somerset. 6 months doing literally every job in the shop. For the record, being a security guard is the most fun. Really, genuinely good fun. But I did everything. You know, worked on the tills, worked the night shift for a couple of weeks, was a frontline supervisor, ran a department, and then I spent 6 months as a store manager. And the 6 months I was a store manager, I was pregnant with child number 2. Child number 1 being about a year old. And I did what...
How did you manage?
Very badly.
Because often we talk to women who have achieved things and they've had a family as well. And I'm always in two minds whether or not I should ask that question.
No, you should ask.
It's kind of a sexist question. Yeah, but I think, you know, from the woman's point of view, particularly younger women, you know, faced with career options and families, it's not easy, is it?
Well, my sort of immediate response is that I was pregnant with number 2 when I was working in the shop in Yeovil, and for me life was okay because I earned quite a lot of money. I had a nanny at home. I had a husband who, you know, who did his fair share. And there were lots. He'd been an MP for about 18 months.
It's a soft old job.
But lots of the women I worked with in the shop were juggling exactly the same childcare responsibilities, but their partner had left them. They were, you know, on shift work at night. It was much harder for them, and they were usually the shining stars in the shop. That, you know, your frontline supervisor, single parents who were, you know, who desperately wanted to keep their jobs because it was a balance in what was a really challenging life. So
we've got a few nurses like that.
Indeed. So I had it easy, and you know, relative to them, I had it genuinely easy. And I think, you know, that's not to say it is objectively easy. By the way, I think for every working mum, it's hard. I think it's hard for working single dads too, and it's you know, it's not easy juggling life, but you get on and do it. And I was lucky because I learnt from those women.
So you did the hard knocks, and then you went to Sainsburys.
So then, as I said, Tesco didn't quite know what to do with me as I finished this programme, and John had been elected, and they probably would have sent me to go and run the business in Thailand or Korea or something, but politicians are not geographically mobile, and they just couldn't find me a job that was right. And I had another call from a headhunter saying, will you meet Justin King for a drink? He was the chief executive of Sainsburys at the time. And I said,
well... There's not a due process in the recruitment, is there?
Well, no, I presume they'd done quite a bit by then. And I said, no. I said, it would feel like selling my grandmother to work for Sainsburys, having been at Tesco. 6 weeks later, Granny was sold. Which is
not okay. Now we know what you are. We just want to know how much.
But to be honest, I left because I used to say to the Sainsburys people, Sainsburys are nice and Tesco is efficient. It is possible to be both. Tesco was, as you said, maybe from your experience, Tesco is a ruthlessly effective commercial machine. But I actually didn't think when I was there, they didn't treat people really very well at all. And actually, I think one of the reasons why Tesco has stumbled so much, and I think they're back on going upwards, but they stumbled because they lost their way in the way they treated people. Their customers, their employees, their suppliers. They sort of lost the humanity of it. Whereas, for all the fact that Sainsburys, when I went to work for them 10 years ago, was nothing like as efficient a business, Sainsburys has always been very true to its roots. You know, it's a business that was founded by John and Mary Ann Sainsburys, from a Quaker family, to bring safe, healthy, affordable food to people originally in Drury Lane in London, who were the most poorest population in London at the time, 155, 160 years ago. And those values were really deeply embedded in Sainsburys. And I personally enjoyed being there a lot more. I found I was able to be me a bit more. They were a bit more tolerant of diversity. Now, I'm conscious you're live streaming this, and I don't want to be critical of a company. Actually, I loved working for Tesco. But I think that the reason I moved from Tesco to Sainsburys was that as a senior woman, I probably learnt, I must have been in my, I guess, late 30s at that stage. I learnt the most important thing about leadership is that you have to be who you really are. that you can't be a good leader if you're trying to be someone that you're not. And in a more diverse culture, I was able to be me in a way that I wasn't actually in Tesco. Tesco were trying to make me a sort of male version of me, or just a more macho version of me, maybe to be kinder to them. And that wasn't who I wanted to be.
Well, those tensions exist, don't they, in all big organisations,
yeah, they do.
And certainly in the NHS. And we'll get on to that a bit later on. But it's interesting to see the influences that have formed you into the person.
It's a bit like heart to heart here, right? A bit worrying.
But it's interesting to see, what makes you think the way you think now. So when did you pitch up at the phone company?
So it would be the phone company, TalkTalk. I started at TalkTalk about 8 years ago, almost exactly 8 years ago.
How was that? What was between the phone company and Sainsburys?
Nothing. So I was at Sainsburys.
Okay. Well, we've got to talk about the phone company.
Of course we can.
Because you got burned there and horribly criticised.
Still here,
I know, and that's a your granddad was right, wasn't he?
Yeah. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly. You got into a shed load of trouble over that data thing. What the hell happened?
Goodness, how long has everyone got?
Well, we've got the room booked till tomorrow morning.
The first thing...
Well, let me position this.
Yeah,
right? Let me give you a softer landing, really, because, it's deep shit, and you can't, it's been interesting to see how you did try...
I'm happy to try thinking.
See how you dig your way out of this one. But, in truth, it was probably one of the really... the first really big, penetrating data breaches that touched the lives of ordinary people. It was big. Now, who left the back door open?
First of all, it was certainly big in terms of media impact. I don't disagree with that at all. The reason it was big was that we made a decision.
A lot of people.
No, actually, it was about 140,000 customers' data. So actually, a lot smaller than a number that have happened since and before. But the reason it was big is that we made a very conscious choice to warn all of our customers before we knew what had been stolen.
Right, let me just stop you there, because it is interesting, this, because we had Michael Adamson here. Anybody here with the Michael Adamson? And that was interesting, wasn't it? Because we were talking about the difficulties that the charities have when things go wrong.
Yeah.
What do? Do you protect the reputation of the organisation, of the company, and try and sort of sort it out quietly, or do you opt for a transparency which is damaging, but in the longer run probably the right thing to do?
And I would do exactly the same again.
Why did you do? When you sat in the boardroom, when you had that sort of oh shit meeting, what are we going to do? What was tell us about the discussion?
Yeah, of course.
It's interesting because it's informative for people facing problems.
I agree, and I think the one thing that everyone running any scale organisation in the public sector or the private sector needs to know is that they will go through something like this.
Yeah.
It's just how you handle it, not whether or not it's ever going to happen to you. So in our case, what happened, and I'm very open about what happened. So if you cast your mind back to about 2.5 years ago, on the Wednesday lunchtime, our website started running slowly, which is usually a sign that you're being attacked in some way, shape or form. The IT team declared an incident and decided that the safest thing to do was to bring down both the customer service access to anything on the web and also our sales side. So immediately the commercial teams are going, so it can't sell anything, what's going on? So we have a emergency incident call that I, as the CEO, was chairing. And
did you have a plan for this, or was it on the hoof?
No, we had a plan.
Right.
So we're on the call and we're going through, and this happens all the time to large businesses with web presences. This is not an unusual thing to be on a call because your websites have gone down because people are worried.
We went up to see NHS Digital. It happens 9 times a day.
Indeed.
The NHS. It's amazing.
So it's not unusual.
No.
So you're on the call. What happened next was unusual. Firstly, my CTO says, actually, guys, I don't think we should be worrying about getting the sales sites up. I think this is a real attack, and I am worried that we might have been penetrated. To which, so you're thinking, okay, you go up to the next level. And I say, right, commercial team, stop arguing about when the site's going to come back up. What are we doing to understand what might have gone, and we move into that. At which point, I get an email from an anonymous email address purporting to be the hacker, with an attachment that is very clearly customer data, and with a attempt to blackmail me, live on the call. The shiver is running down my spine as I tell the story. I do not ever want to be in that situation again. The beauty of the situation was we were a telco. So I had good relationships with GCHQ because telcos have to work in a secure environment. So I immediately said to the security director who was on the call, I said, we need to call GCHQ, get their advice on what to do. This looks real to me. At that point, the world changed. Within 24 hours, so the next 24 hours, we had BAE Systems ran our security operations centre. They have operations all around the world, so they use the 24-hour cycle. They have people working through the US through the night, to try and understand what's actually being taken. And we had a call at 8 o'clock the next morning where the team from BAE ran through what they thought might, bear in mind this is all might have been accessed. And the call begins with, firstly, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, it's now sort of too far distant, but begins with, there's 100,000 of this, 200,000 of that, and you're thinking this is all, and 500,000 credit card details, brackets, we're not sure whether they were encrypted. And at that point, as the chief executive, this is now gone from very serious to completely, deadly. We've got to treat this completely differently. They then went to 4 million bank account details, might be, and you're thinking, right, okay, 30 million email addresses, to which, and everyone was sort of just, in shock, and after about 30 seconds said, did you really say 30 million email addresses? How can we have 30 million email addresses? And they said, well, we don't know, but the file has got 30 million lines in it, and we don't know what's been taken. And at that point, my chairman and I, and the board, we were all really clear that because we didn't know, and, actually, it's the most dangerous thing that was stolen was customers' bank account details. It's actually quite hard to steal from somebody armed with their bank account details. Every time that you do an online transaction, you give it to them, or in the old days, wrote a cheque. It's really quite hard, but it's very easy to improve your scam when you call a vulnerable customer if you're armed with a customer's bank account details. You can pretend to be, and the awful truth is those scammers are one of the most insidious sort of crimes preying on vulnerable people. So we took a decision that we knew it was going to take us. We thought it would take us several days to identify whose data had actually been stolen. Turned out it was a couple of weeks. We thought that a couple of days was too long, that we could protect our most vulnerable customers if we warned them straight away. Because actually, don't worry, your bank account details have been stolen, but just be cautious if someone calls you pretending to be from TalkTalk. They're a criminal. And so we made it a big issue.
But that was a tough call.
It was a really tough call.
It was a brave call.
And it was a call that the Metropolitan Police did not want us to make, which again is in the public domain. And I don't think they'd ever do that again after what we did, because afterwards they agreed that what we'd done was right. But we were the first big company to go through this. It's interesting, isn't it? It's what
I was writing about this morning. It's old power and new power.
And we were all learning.
Yeah.
So the advice, and you never really want to be as a private company on an incident call with the Met on the call. But they were, as we as a board discussed what to do, and we decided by Thursday afternoon, it happened on the Wednesday, so within 24 hours we decided we needed to warn all of our customers.
On the Met, can I just ask you, were the Met sort of net tech savvy?
Once we had all realised quite how big it is, because what we did was by going public in the way that we did, we undoubtedly created more panic than was necessary. If this happened again, as I think the NHS managed the WannaCry last summer, you have the organisation that's been attacked with the National Cybersecurity Centre beside them, with everyone joined up saying this is how you protect yourselves. I didn't have that. I was on my own on the news at 10, breaking this story to try and warn my customers. And so initially, it was really hard to navigate who in the law enforcement world could help us. Now, the National Cybersecurity Centre, and it's my small gift to Britain, is that we definitely played a part in the creation of the National Cybersecurity Centre. And I know the team there very well, and we all were trying to make up how to join, because joining government agencies up, as we in the health service know very well, is hard. And so I was trying to navigate that with my team live. So the Met initially weren't tech savvy. Once it had become this national incident, we had the best tech brains in Britain on the problem, from the Met, from all the law enforcement agencies, and I can't fault them at all. They were brilliant. but we were all learning how to join up and react in that sort of a large scale.
And when you had to face the media, did you have advice and support on how to face the media, or did you just trust your intuition?
Well, there was lots of advice, but it was so real time. You know, the advisors didn't have much time to give the advice before I had to go out and do it. Now, in retrospect, we probably fed the beast a bit too much. We took the view that
you could have said, "Here's a written statement."
No, but our view was...
But you could have done.
We could have done, and I absolutely think that would have been the wrong thing to do, and CEOs that have done that have not lived to fight another day, and their brands have not lived to fight another day.
I was on the radio 2 mornings ago discussing policy from the CCG on the South Coast, which was a tricky problem for them, but they wouldn't appear.
Yeah.
They issued an anodyne statement, and I tore into them because they've made the situation worse. But this sort of fessing up approach to the media, it's rare.
It's not easy, and there are lots of corporate CEOs that look at what happened to me and think I never want to do that.
Yeah.
But actually, the biggest lesson I learned was I think I saved my business. I think my customers thought that as well. And I know I wouldn't be sitting here doing this if I hadn't. It was, and I had a lot.
But you were pretty horrible to people who wanted to cancel it. You were horrible.
We didn't completely fall over on everything. We tried
Learn the phrase. That's tonight's take-home phrase. We didn't fall over on everything.
We tried really hard to do what we thought was right.
Yeah.
And what we found and I really believe this, and if you went and talked to any of the agents who work in TalkTalk's call centres all around the world, they'd tell you this as well. It was probably the first really, truly unambiguously good thing TalkTalk had ever done. And that, our brand was not John Lewis, far from it. And what we did was we honestly went out there and said, we're really sorry, this might have happened, this is how we're trying to protect you, and we're going to keep telling you what's happening to try and keep you whole. And at once everything died down, about a month later, we gave every customer in our network an opportunity to have a free upgrade on us. Just completely, no T's and C's, none of those awful, detailed legals at the bottom of the offer, just genuinely a gift. And that transformed the brand's relationship with our customers because we'd said sorry, even given that actually it was only a very small proportion of the customer base who'd been directly affected. So we tried to do what was right all the way through, and our agents kept saying to us, this is brilliant because we know what we're doing is right.
For your call centre staff, how did you keep them in the loop? Because that was tricky.
Well, the benefit of being a digital business, so everybody's connected digitally. Yeah. I had always blogged to everyone in the company, both direct employees and outsourced employees in the call centres once a week. During the crisis, I was personally blogging 2 or 3 times a day, 7 days a week, and people were responding. And so I'm a really big believer that if you want to lead people through change, good or bad change, you need to keep communicating. And a crisis is the absolute the nexus of that. So we did a huge amount of communication, and not all of it was particularly corporate. I think people in the NHS are much more knowledgeable about this than business leaders are, because you have to work under intense pressure in emergency situations as part of your day job. But for people running a telco, that's not normal. And what we found was a lot of our people just were burning out. They didn't know how to sort of self-regulate. And so, I ended up doing quite a lot of the role modelling of blogging, saying it's midnight on Saturday night, I haven't had much sleep in the last 3 days, I'm signing off and going to sleep. Please, if you're still working, it's time to stop now. And telling people to go home, making sure that we had a degree of humanity through the crisis. And it was a very bonding experience, as all of you know, when you live through that and you do live to fight another day. And I genuinely, I wouldn't wish it on any company again. I wouldn't wish it on TalkTalk again. But actually, TalkTalk was the better for it, because we learnt we were a challenger brand that was trying to make the internet available to everybody. And we'd sort of lost our way a bit, and we're just doing standard offers, and our service wasn't good, and we'd stopped being a champion for change. And we learned in the heat of a crisis that if you do what's right for your customers, actually they forgive you. Well, they more than forgive you. So within 6 weeks of the attack, churn is the metric that telcos care about most, how many of your customers leave each month. And our churn was better 6 weeks after the attack than it had been beforehand. Because we'd lost some of our most unhappy customers, to be fair, but it was fundamentally because we'd done the right thing. So I do a lot of talking about the cyber attack because there's so much for everyone to learn. That we clearly made some big mistakes, and I'd be the first to admit it. But actually, the thing we got right was that we were honest with our customers.
Yeah. It's a really interesting experience. So then you bailed out of there.